Hello there, beautiful human. John Siddique here. Welcome to season 2 of the book club, and it's a real pleasure to see you again and to kind of make contact with you through this medium. It's great to be back. I've been away in India, and I'm still a wee bit jet lagged, so if I look a wee bit tired on screen, then that's why. I've only been back a couple of days, and we had our first book group this morning in Waterstones in Bradford. I want to extend a very special welcome to those of you joining us from the Bradford Literature Festival book group, which is running alongside this. This book group is a reading rounds book group, which is funded and supported by the Royal Literary Fund. I'm a former Royal Literary Fellow, and I still do work like this for the RLF. I'm a writer myself. I've published a number of books of poetry and non-fiction and some short stories and things like that. And the idea was to set up a number of reading for pleasure book groups around the country that were a little bit different in that they were writer-led, so that we have perhaps a little more insight into how the writing works, although they're not creative writing based. We're not looking to kind of do writing from reading what we read, but just to have that kind of authorial insight where, you know, it's appropriate. And also what's different about our reading group and the other sort of 24 reading rounds around the country is that all the reading takes place within the group. There's no homework. But if you're joining us from the Lit Fest, then you'll be just finding out now what it is that we're going to be looking at, and so you'll be kind of hopefully finding the books or finding sources to access these stories and poems and non-fiction and so on. We look at all sorts of writing from all over the world, and yeah, and hopefully there'll be something there for you, you know. We have a couple of guidelines with the Reading Rounds group, the Bradford group, particularly because it's made out of the people that it's made out of. Our number one rule, not rule, but guideline perhaps, is kindness. It's a very kind group, so everybody is welcome, and nothing that we want to read or have enjoyed reading in the past is frowned upon in any way, and this is really, really important. We are free to read anything we want to read. Yeah, and the other guideline is that we try to go beyond the simple I like it or I don't like it kind of thing, because that's just kind of simply, you know, it's simply at the level of ego, isn't it? And it doesn't kind of get us anywhere. But kind of we're very, you know, we live in a world that's very quick to react, very quick to be all about the reaction, and not so much about the content. And our group is very much about the content, really. And, you know, I don't like it is an interesting beginning if we can ask ourselves, what is it that we don't like? And to kind of answer that question in ourselves, and to kind of to actually look at the text. Are we reacting, or are we actually meeting the text? So I invite you over the coming weeks to meet the text rather than meeting our own kind of you know, conditioning perhaps, you know. So anyway, let's move on. This morning we looked at 3 short pieces. We looked at a short story, and then we looked at 2 poems. And the short story we looked at was by a writer who was huge, absolutely huge, but whose work seems to have been kind of forgotten about now, or his name is still remembered, but he's not read so much. And that writer is Hermann Hesse, German writer, writing around the time of the First World War and into the 1920s and 30s, and very much against what was going on in those times. But his writing isn't protest writing. His writing is a call to awareness, a call to the human spirit. And, perhaps his most famous book is Siddhartha, this one here. This is considered perhaps his great work by many people. He won the Nobel Prize for Literature for a book called his final book was a kind of seen as a kind of masterwork, The Glass Bead Game. For myself, I actually believe that his book Nulp is his peak, but that's my taste. And something I should say, actually, you want to get in the story, but I'm off on a tangent, you see. Something that I should say is that the group, the materials that we choose for the group are not selected around my taste. I choose the stories and the poems for, will they give us pleasure? Will they challenge us? Will they widen our horizons? Are they a kind of writing that we have met before? Is it something that we won't be exposed to in school? Is it something that we don't normally get to see? Those are the criteria for the choice, is not just that I like them. So even though, I call these videos John's Book Group, it's really about, honouring the readers that we are and kind of giving us something to actually kind of enjoy and work with. And it's absolutely fine to not like something as well. It doesn't mean that we're a good reader or a bad reader if we don't like something. Anyway, the story that we looked at this morning, it was called Three LIndens, from this book, Pictor's Metamorphoses. And Hesse throughout his life was a lover of folk stories, and he also kind of was deeply invested in looking at Buddhist texts and the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible and drawing on sort of spiritual and sacred traditions. And Three LIndens is the story of a young man who set 300 years ago, and he doesn't tell his brothers where he's going one night because he's off to meet a young woman for a date to go walking around the town. And on his way to his date, he hears a sound in an alleyway. He goes down the alleyway to investigate, and somebody's been stabbed through the heart and is about to expire. And he kind of looks after the person while they pass away. In many ways, it's perhaps a resetting of the Good Samaritan. One of our group said this perhaps is kind of like a more modern day version of the Good Samaritan. What would happen today to the Good Samaritan, going to rescue or going to try and sort of tend and aid somebody's wounds. And he's seen by two policemen kind of dawdling in the alleyway because he's completely confused and he doesn't know what to do. And, should he just walk away quietly? Should he go and report it to the police? And he gets arrested and the murder is put onto him. And then when his brother hears about what has happened, the brother goes to the courthouse and says, no, my younger brother didn't do it. I did it. And then when the older brother hears about this, he goes to the courthouse and says, no, my younger brother didn't do this, nor my older younger brother didn't do this. I did it. I'm the murderer. So the judge has no idea what to do, and this is where the kind of the folk tale kind of opens up into something very, very interesting. Let me just read you a little bit of this. Stepping into the darkness of the secluded place, he saw, with horror, that a man lay there in a pool of his own blood. He bent over the man and asked compassionately what had happened, but there was no reply except for weak moaning and sobbing. The injured man had a knife wound in his heart, and a few moments later passed away in the arms of the one who had come to his aid. The young man did not know what to do next, and since the slain man showed no further signs of life, the youth, dismayed and disconcerted, proceeded with uncertain footsteps to return to the alley. At that very moment, along came two sentries on duty, and while he was considering whether to call out to them for help
or walk away in silence. The sentries, observing his terror-stricken condition, approached him. Seeing the blood on his shoes and coat sleeves, they seized him by force, scarcely listening to what he was now beseechingly trying to tell them. They found the dead man close by, the body already cold, and without delay, they took the alleged murderer to prison, where he was put in irons and closely guarded.
Obviously, I invite you now to kind of have a look at the whole text. You may not be able to get hold of this that easily. I think it's out of print, but you can get collected folk tales of Hermann Hesse, I believe. The group absolutely adored Three LIndens, and what was amazing is that for such a small story, it's just 5 pages in the book, maybe 10 minutes reading, there was so much to it. There was the references, the kind of the European take on paganism that was in there, that was recognized by one of our group, the biblical references, but not in a kind of heavy way, but just that kind of the drawing out of these kind of incredible kind of influences that we've all had in our lives through our schooling and so on. But the kind of the weaving of something old and new at the same time out of it. And, he uses, if you've ever been to kind of see, somebody, a good storyteller telling a story, he uses real storytelling technique. See if you can spot kind of the use of the repetition as you kind of take a look at this. See how he uses the kind of the framing of the three brothers, how the beginning and the end are kind of linked together. There's a kind of a whole beautiful kind of rhythmic set of devices in here that kind of carry the story along so beautifully. And of course, I can't tell you any more, because if I tell you any more, you'll know what happens next. So for our poems, we looked at 2 pieces by Kahlil Gibran from what is his kind of considered his greatest work by many, many people, which is The Prophet, which was, I think, originally published in 1926. Gibran himself was a poet, philosopher, an incredible visual artist, and his books have usually got kind of, if you get the kind of like the older editions of his books, have got the most beautiful kind of renderings of his artwork in. This is my own copy of The Prophet. I've lost the dust cover now. I've had this since I was 14 years old, so next year, or July this year, I'll have had this book 40 years. And here's a kind of a little bit of the artwork from inside. Absolutely astonishing, beautiful book. So again, try and find yourself a decent copy if you're going to get one. Won't cost you that much. The Prophet, though, is a kind of monumental book, and we looked at the poems on marriage and on children, which they've stood the test of time. Gibran, I think, was born in the Lebanon, and he was a Coptic Christian, and all the way through his life he reflected on kind of what we might call spirituality, but the word spirituality these days is kind of tinged with a kind of new aginess and a kind of fluffiness, perhaps. So that's how we might perceive it. But Gibran's kind of writing, like in The Prophet, it's set out as a story in the beginning of that. This is this kind of old prophet who lives in a town, and his ship is coming to take him away. He's about to die and kind of, go to the next world. And the people gather because he's beloved, and they want to ask him questions one last time. And so this person, Al-Mitra, at the beginning of the book, asks him some questions, speak to us about marriage. And then a woman in the crowd says, speak to us about children. Then a businessman says, speak to us about money, speak to us about food. And then the prophet answers in these kind of beautiful poems. I want to share marriage with you now, just so you can get a sense of this. This is kind of, even to this day, I think this is kind of sound advice from a loving heart. And perhaps, we should all kind of have a look at this before we go getting married or entering into relationships. I hope you enjoy this.
On Marriage by Kahlil Gibran. You were born together, and together you shall be for evermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. Aye, you shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow.
Each member of the group like their own lines. There was kind of, one person liked, give your hearts but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And somebody else really liked, and stand together yet not too near together. Just this idea of kind of, we're not bonded together, but that love is kind of based in life itself and living our own lives. And we observe that the poem is even. It's not kind of from a male point of view or from a female point of view. That's not even mentioned at all. There's a kind of a true balance within the poem, and the kind of the rhythms and the language are just so beautiful. And so that went down very well. And there was some kind of I'm going to go and dig that off my bookshelf, because most people seem to have a copy of the Prophet, but it hasn't been open for a long time. So we'll leave it there. I hope you enjoy the pieces. If you are on the Facebook group, then I think Georgina from the Lit Fest will be moderating and kind of joining in with you there. I don't do Facebook myself, so I have a page for my work, which just kind of, shows what I'm doing and kind of invites people to little things that I'm putting on and classes and so on. But I don't do the kind of social networking thing on Facebook, so I won't be joining you there. But you can leave comments down below this video on the YouTube. If you need to let me know anything, please do let me know how you've got on with the pieces, what they reminded you of, or kind of how you felt about them, but, actually meeting the text as well. And I think, I chose these two pieces or these two writers because we need them right now. The thought, we're always looking for the new, but sometimes the new or what we need is in the old, or in the kind of what we already have, and we just need to go back to it and look at it again. And certainly, given the tilt of the world at the moment, shall we say, I think we need Hermann Hesse and Kahlil Gibran. So until next week, lots of love to you. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Please give this video a thumbs up, because that helps it get seen by other people, and leave us a comment down below, and check out the other videos and see what you think. Lots of love. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.